Hi, everyone, and welcome to Three Things I Learned Last Week. Here back again in yet a new location because I like to always be on the move. I decided to invest in some co-working space near my home so I could get away from my home. And so they have this great, video conferencing broadcast booth, whatever you want to call it, that I get to use. So let's see how this works today. We're going to give it a try. I'm so excited to have on the show with me today my colleague and friend, Kristyn Brophy, who is our Director of Client Strategy at LISI. She is going to be talking about lighting and also some of the research I'm looking into in terms of podcast production. So today, a few things to talk about. Obviously, I do want to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion and origination credit, as I mentioned last week. Obviously, then we'll be joined by Kristyn, who's going to talk about the lighting and the podcast production. So last couple of weeks ago, I went down a rabbit hole on LinkedIn, and let me back it up a second. I have been for several years now very intentionally researching diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think a lot of us are. It is more than just a buzzword. It is something we should all be intentionally focusing on and putting into practice. I personally feel like I have a lot to learn in this space for a few reasons. One, because I grew up in a pretty homogenous environment, and I wasn't really exposed to a lot of diversity in terms of not cultural diversity. I was exposed to culturally diverse, but really, I just felt like I was sort of, I grew up in a specific church in a specific community and just always a specific way of thinking about things. So as I've become an adult and, kind of got involved in my career and been exposed to different approaches to business and approaches just to, people and interactions, it has been something that I have developed a very deep passion for. Also, during my time at Ballard Spahr, Ballard is one of the best firms when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I say this often. Virginia Esando, who is the Chief Diversity Officer, is really inspiring. She's very dedicated to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I feel like I learned so much about her, diversity from her during my time there, but also really from the leadership of the firm. It is truly something where I believe the firm puts its money where its mouth is. So because of that learning and that experience, it's something I continue to take with me. And I pay attention when I am exposed to some diversity topics that I could definitely learn more about. So a couple of weeks ago, I went down a rabbit hole on LinkedIn. I'm going to tell you about it. I saw this meme that somebody named Matt Margolis posted. Matt bills himself as the millennial lawyer. I now follow him on LinkedIn if you're interested in following him. But I thought it was really interesting. You would think it has nothing to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion. But meme, two people playing Uno, person nearest to the camera, paying attorneys for bringing in new clients, or draw 25. And of course, you see law firms on the other side of the table just keeping drawing. And I thought that was a really interesting thing, just talking about origination credit and how that comes to be. Of course, I've been in the legal industry for about 15 years, so I understand what origination credit is. For anybody who doesn't understand or is unfamiliar with origination credit, it is the credit that an attorney receives for bringing in a new client or any subsequent work with that client. But what really struck me, the rabbit hole I went down, is one of the commenters on the post shared this article from Above the Law about diversity and origination credit. And the article, I'm going to post it in my comments following the live stream. It was really interesting, and I want to share a couple takeaways for me from that article, and I'm interested to hear what you think about it. So please, once you see the link to the article on this post, I would love to hear what you say, comment, react to it. But a couple things. One thing that the author writes, the past few weeks I've been inundated by law firms supporting Black Lives Matter, offering Juneteenth as a firm-wide holiday, and otherwise toting their positions on equality. This author, by the way, is an in-house counsel at a large company. This is a step in the right direction, but it's not enough. More is needed than just paid time off, inspirational quotes, and photos on a website for law firms to prove that they value diversity and inclusion. They must put their money where their mouths are. And that really resonated with me because I every time I personally or as the agency, we want to talk about something related to a diversity issue, we always have a conversation about whether or not are we just talking about this because it's the buzzword, or are we talking about it because we really care very deeply about it? And not only do we care very deeply about it, which we always do, but that we're living it in all of the things that we do as an agency, or that I'm living in all the things that I do professionally and personally. So I thought that quote was really interesting. But as you read further into the article, there were 4 key takeaways for in-house counsel in interacting with their outside counsel at law firms related to diversity and equity and inclusion. And I'll let you read these for yourself. I'll let you read them in the article, but focusing on the outside counsel guidelines, making sure that they're specific and they're specifically drawing out what diversity and inclusion actually means to that firm, and how this teams are going to be staffed, et cetera. Also talking about engagement or re-engagement letters, which is something that I found super interesting. I'd never heard of a re-engagement letter, but talking about in that letter specifying who gets the credit, and reviewing and reiterating the relationship so that the equality conversation is always top of mind. Or at the end, maybe complying or cutting ties. And I'm not going to butcher the author's point, because again, I feel like I have a lot to learn here, but the connection she draws between diverse attorneys and their fraction of the opportunity for origination credit, and then in-house counsel's responsibility to make sure that those diverse attorneys actually have an opportunity to receive the credit that they're due. It was really interesting. I know I've said that 100 times, but I'm excited to share it with you all. And if you haven't read it yet, I really encourage you to read it. Moving along, I'm going to invite my colleague, Kristyn, into the stream here, and we are going to talk about, she's going to talk about lighting. I'm going to let her take the stage for a little bit. Thanks so much for being here, Kristyn.
Thank you so much for having me. I love talking about lighting. So
I know. And tell everybody why. Tell everybody why. What's your background?
So I have a bachelor's degree in lighting design. So my background is definitely in lighting, and I still do a lot of theatrical lighting for local high schools in my area. I volunteer at Bedford High School in Massachusetts, soon to be Plymouth High School once they are back and all the COVID restrictions are out. And I've also done lighting and technical direction for other high schools in the area, but my degree is in lighting design. So that's what I went to college for. And one of my pet peeves is seeing bad lighting on Zoom calls or on live streams or recordings. And I just wanted to, hop on and offer some quick tips for those who are not professional lighting designers and who do not have a background in lighting design, with some easy ways to find your best light on Zoom and on camera.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to let you take the stage then and tell us all about how to find your best light.
Yeah, absolutely. So really quickly, as you can see, I'm pretty well lit. I have a ring light, which this is a ring light, which you can all see. They're very easy to get now on Amazon. They used to be, the big things for Instagram influencers and for, internet stars, and photographers use ring lights a lot, and, lighting in TV and newscasting and such. That is definitely what ring lights were used for. Now they're so widely spread because we all, uplifted and came home, and everybody needs to be well lit on Zoom because that's how we're meeting people these days. But anyway, if you don't have access to a ring light, another really easy way to light yourself is to place yourself in front of a window. So I also have a window right here and a window to my side. So if I turn my ring light off, just to give you an example, it's not the best lighting, but it's better than nothing. I'm still getting a lot of natural light from the outside just from my windows. And I'll talk a little bit about the different kinds of light when you're finding your light on camera. So I'm using this flashlight just as an example so you can see how light bounces in different ways. If you don't have a ring light, if you can't put yourself up against a window, a desk light or a flashlight bouncing somewhere works just fine too. So the different kinds of light that we use in theater, in film, in TV, newscasting, TikTok videos, Instagram live videos, whatever you want to use it on. You have got 4 main types of light. You have front light, which comes right from the front. And of course, it's very bright in here, so you may not notice it. Then you have side light, which comes from the side. You have foot light, which is kind of that spooky, scary Halloween lighting that you never want to really use on camera. It's not really flattering unless you're using it for an effect. And then you have top light. And top light's tough to see right now because my room is very well lit, or my office is well lit, and you can see me well, and you can't see the light as well. But when you are lighting yourself for camera, for Zoom, say, like I said, have a window right in front of you, or you can have a piece of paper and bounce light off the piece of paper onto your face, and that will kind of do the same thing. Or have a blank Word document, Google Docs, Microsoft Office, Word, what have you, open on your screen. So it's a big white window and your computer brightness all the way up, and that will bounce the light as well. So you don't have to have these big professional lights. So I'm going to turn my ring light back on so you can see the difference it makes. My window, my natural lighting, and my ring light. I don't have my overhead light on in my office, my home office, because that's going to cast a lot of shadows down from my face. I have bangs and a side part, like most millennials with side parts. And that would cast a shadow on my face if I have the top light. And it would cast a shadow for my glasses if I have top light. Kind of similar to foot light coming from the bottom, you get these ugly shadows coming up. Same thing happens from the top, which is why you want to have light always coming from the front or sides, and you can use a blank piece of paper on your desk to bounce it back up into your face. My ring light is actually off to the side because it creates a little bit more dimension on my face and makes it a little bit softer rather than the harsh coming right from the front light. So those are the different ways you can focus your light and position your lighting for film. And like I said, if you just have a desk lamp, you can just bounce the light off the wall and back at you, bounce the light off the desk back onto your face with a white piece of paper, or bounce the light from your computer screen with a blank Microsoft document.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kristyn. I was sitting there thinking for a second, like, gosh, does everybody have a ring light right now at this point? But realistically, I had never thought to open a Word document. I thought about, obviously your computer screen reflects back at you, but reflecting just that white light from a blank Word document or Google Docs, that's really smart. And never thought about bouncing it off of a wall too. So thank you. I learned something. Like, no, yes, I learned something.
And then you can also play around with your temperature. So right now my ring light is set to neutral, but you can also do warm white. So you can actually see the difference on me a little bit. Warm white or cool white and neutral. So depending on what your lighting situation is in the room, these ring lights these days are very intuitive, and you can do all sorts of different softness and tone. And when it's dark out at nighttime, I'm not going to have my ring light on full brightness because that would just wash me out. And I'm a very pale person, so I get washed out easily.
You and me both, girlfriend.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so let's move on to the last thing I wanted to talk about today, which was podcast production. So I promised my audience last week that I was going to do some research about hosting on SoundCloud, and I'm going to be really honest, I did not do that, and I didn't have time to do it last week. It got kind of busy. So then I thought to myself towards the end of the week, I'm so silly. Kristyn's going to be on the show already, and she already produces podcasts, so maybe she can teach me a little bit of something else live, and hopefully it'll be useful to our audience. So we talked, full disclosure, we talked a little bit about this before coming live, but honestly, I'm going to be asking Kristyn questions in real time. So, okay. So Kristyn, I have this thing that I'm doing, 3 things that I learned last week. And as I've said on a previous stream, I can download the video and I can download a separate audio file. And we've been talking at LISI, as you know, about potentially starting a content stream on podcasts. And I have mixed emotions about that for a number of reasons. Thinking about podcasting, where are you going to get your audience from? What's their reason for listening to a podcast as opposed to what's their motivation for listening to a podcast rather than watching a video? How are we most likely to engage? However, if we already have the content, I already have the content from this, why not make it more universally available to people who might prefer it, rather than starting from scratch? So that's where I'm coming from, trying to think of, okay, if I've got this audio, how could I potentially turn into a podcast? I don't know the first thing about what to do with that. So I know you said we got to host it somewhere. Start from there, please.
Absolutely. I mean, having the sound file is half the battle. And we can talk about editing sound files and stuff in a little bit too, if you'd like. But you need two things initially to set up a podcast. You need a place to host it, and then you need a place to push it out from. And by that, I mean an RSS feed or, some place where you're getting these live updates that are being pushed out to Apple Podcasts or to iTunes. And then once it's up there, it kind of goes out into the ether and goes into a lot of other places where podcasts are available. At SoundCloud, it's my favorite place to oh my goodness, I'm fumbling over my own words here. SoundCloud is my favorite place to host podcasts. There we go. Slow down. I got it out. SoundCloud is the best. It is very cost effective. It's a small cost for a pro account, an annual cost, and it has unlimited hosting. So you can host as few or as many as you'd like. And it doesn't have a megabyte or gigabyte limit. You can just kind of put up as much as you'd like and have different channels so you can kind of segment your content in different ways. But by hosting it on SoundCloud, you not only have a place to host it and a place from which to play it or listen to it, you also get that RSS feed that can push it out to Apple and to Spotify and to all of these other places where podcasts are disseminated, and you can have more people listening and subscribing to your content. SoundCloud also gives you the option to take that sound file and embed it on your website. Much like YouTube, where you can embed the YouTube video on your website, you can take that SoundCloud clip and just embed it on your website. So you don't actually have to direct people to SoundCloud if you don't want to, and you can host a library right on your website with those embed codes.
Okay, so I have the edited audio. Let's skip over the process of editing for a second. I have the edited audio. I have a pro account with SoundCloud. I have a channel for 3 things I learned last week. For some reason, I keep wanting to say 10 things I hate about you. I'm not going to lie. Every time I say it, I want to say that. So 3 things I learned last week. And once I have the account set up and I have the edited audio set up and all of the things, somebody could go to iTunes or wherever they get podcasts. They could search for my podcast and they could subscribe to it through their podcast app or however they listen to podcasts. Is that right?
So what you have to do, there's one little initial step in there for setting it up on iTunes, is take either your specific Apple ID or create an Apple ID specific to the podcast and then just connect that RSS feed. And then once that RSS feed is connected from SoundCloud to iTunes or Apple Podcasts, then it gets pushed out everywhere automatically. And you only have to set it up once. It's kind of a set it and forget it kind of deal, which is amazing.
That is amazing. Okay, so we're coming up on time, but top 3 takeaways for getting ready. So we know what we do once we have it ready, but what do you need? You need channel art. You need edited audio file. What are the 3 things you need?
3 things you would need. You want your album art, is what it's called for a podcast, kind of like a CD cover or something like that. It's just a square. So album art, channel art, what have you. You want your SoundCloud account and your iTunes account or Apple ID account set up and talking to each other so that it gets pushed out automatically everywhere. And then you want a way to publish it and market it and, push it out there to people so that you get subscribers and get regular listeners coming back for more.
Awesome. I have a feeling we're going to be talking about this again, both online and offline. So I'm going to have you back again once I don't know, figure out some of that stuff. But thank you so much for being on today. And as always, for teaching me so many things. And thank you everybody for tuning in once again. Join us next week. And we'll talk about more exciting 3 things we learned this week, but it'll be next week. Bye.
Bye.